So the next thing that we are going to cover with simulations is water simulation. So before we go into the actual simulation of the water, I'm going to show you a quick thing that you can use if you want to create some larger piles of water. You can use this ocean modifier that gives you basically some settings with generating really big areas of water. Now, right now we don't have the material for water, so that would be a separate thing. But just for generating into geometry, you can use this. And then, let me go to mesh view. And then you can also animate the time, so you can see how things move in here. You can also animate the size of this, depth. So depth is good to see how, basically how far it goes down, basically. You can randomize it. There is waves, so if the waves are really big, you can increase this, and then you can get higher waves while you are changing the time. There is some settings for the waves. I won't go too much into that. And then there is also foam. And then you also have to save it to the data layer, and then use that data layer to basically generate particles in the places of foam. And foam is generated, I think it will be generated at the heights of the waves, if I remember correctly, but yeah. We can also spray it. And now what you would do with animation is you can just right click on time, insert keyframe, and then go somewhere else, change the time and insert the keyframe, and now you have a nice wave simulation. Now of course you would want to change interpolation to linear here, but now you can see how you can create really easily wave simulations. And maybe it's a bit too fast now. Just take the keyframe, move it, and get nicer moving waves. Now, of course, this repeat X and Y might give you a bit too much of repeating waves. So it depends on what you're using. You might want to set this to 2 and then change the resolution, stuff like that, or have different blocks of water with different simulations or animations. So yeah, I just quickly wanted to go over that. So you have that option, so you don't have to actually simulate. You want to simulate water or fluids in the small area, usually closest to your camera, and then have everything around not be simulated, because it gets it could be expensive to have like a huge area simulated. It can take literally hours or days for just a single frame if you have a huge body of water. So now that we have this, let's actually go to our physics, click on fluid, and let's do domain on this, but we want this to be liquid. And let's increase the size for this box, maybe not that big, something like this. And I'm also going to add a smaller cube, just like we did for the previous video for fire and smoke. And from this box, I want to basically go to physics, click on fluid and flow for the liquid, and we want inflow. So now we have two flows that we want to use. There is also one thing in here that you want to use, and that is mesh. And this is, so our object actually becomes a mesh. So let's just delete these points in here. So if I click play, we can see this actual simulation. So if you don't have mesh enabled, then you can just see the points where the water could be, or where the mesh would be, but we don't have the actual mesh generated. And you can use this, but we can actually just quickly generate the mesh, which can help us visualize or even use this. So this mesh, if we go to material, uses the material that the cube had in before. So if we change some settings in here, we can see how we can even go in here, maybe change the cycles. Let's maybe change shading to smooth. We can quickly just create some material to make it more interesting. Maybe it's metallic, something like gold, and do something like this. So we can quickly kind of visualize our liquid sim. And I'm also gonna go here and re-render it. And since we have the inflow, we can see how the water is filling up. and this is everything just by default settings. You have the same thing with resolution. Of course, if we increase this and try to render it again, the speed goes down dramatically, but the resolution is way, way, way better. So the same thing as fire and smoke simulation. Keep in mind resolution while you're just testing things. You want to use this. If you're testing something where the water needs to go through really small crevices, stuff like that, you might want to increase the resolution, but in general, putting on 32 should give you okay results to kind of review stuff. Now you have simulation method, which is flip. Flip is the best, but you can also use the other ones if you are interested. There is viscosity. This is good if you have something like honey, where it is way more the particles connect with each other way more, so it is way more kind of droopy and sticky. So you can also use this. Let's see, viscosity. Also, what we can do is let's add a sphere again, and let's add it in here, and let's set the sphere to be a factor, or actually let's make it flow, but make it outflow. So now, if you try to simulate, this sphere is gonna absorb all the water that comes into it, or at least should be. So let's see. Basically should be absorbing. I think it is. It's just hard to see. Maybe move it a bit down. Yeah, it is absorbing a little bit, but the water is also going around. So basically all the water that wants to go into this sphere, it will be kind of absorbed by the sphere. And this can be useful if you want to have like an outflow. If you want to have like an outflow where the water should kind of start going out, you can use this. But you can also use a factor with collision to basically just stop the water ever going there. And it will always go around. So let's go to solid and see how that looks. So those are kind of the basic things. We can also go to the inflow. And if you remember, we also have this option for initial velocity. Water does not have to just pour down with gravity. It can just spray like this. So you can choose kind of how your water starts behaving based on your inflow. And if we do the geometry in here, it will just splash a little bit of water that is in the same volume as the initial flow object, and then that's about it. Then the water will just try to settle, and that's basically it. So you have to use inflow if you want a continuous stream of water to go there. And let's see if we have anything in here. We of course have our cache. Depending on what you want to do, you probably don't want to have this simulation running your whole render. Maybe it starts some points, ends at some points. You have to use it there. There is also guides. If you have an object that is a guide, you can also have some options to how will fluid be affected when the water is going through that guide object.